What is the bishop knight checkmate in chess? And I'm going to show you it right now, and I'm going to guide you on the steps that you should be doing to deliver this checkmate. So the white pieces have the bishop and knight, and the black piece has a lonely king. The first thing that we need to be doing with the white pieces is centralizing our pieces. And with the bishop and knight, it is very different to coordinate these pieces. For example, we primarily need our knight to be on the same color square as our bishop to take control of the opposite squares that our bishop can't take control of. For example, let me just show you. So king e2, king d7, king d3, king e6, king e4, king d6, bishop e2, king e6, bishop e5, king e7, bring the knight in, knight f3, king e6, knight d4, and king d7. In this position, our knight is taking control of the light squares of the position, okay? Of the light squares. So we're taking control of the c6, e6, b5, f5 squares. And our bishop is taking control of the diagonals of the dark squares. And so now this king is under like a little barrier that can't go above these four squares, all right? And that leads us to our next step. The second step for white to do in this position, after you centralize all your pieces, is to push the opponent's king to the edge of the board with our king. And that would be the next step. Well, let's say that you was defending this position though. Well, this king needs to go to the opposite color corner of your opponent's bishop. What do I mean by that? Well, since I have the dark color square bishop, then this king needs to go to the A8 square, to this corner, or to the H1 corner, since it is impossible for the white pieces to checkmate in these corners. But we would need to checkmate in the H8 corners or the A1 corner. If white had a light square bishop, then vice versa, the king needs to go to the H8 corner and the A1 corner instead of going towards the checkmating corners. Okay, now let's continue on with the next step. We got king d5, king c8, king d6, king b8, king c6, check, king a8, and now we're not going to go king b6 and draw the game, but we're going to move on to our next step. And the next step is to get this king out this corner so that we can checkmate the king. And we need to drag this king to either the a1 corner or the h8 corner. But in order to get this king out this corner, we need our knight either on c7 or b6. And we're going to go towards the c7 square. Let's get this knight to the c7 square. Knight e6, king a7, and now we went to knight c7. After going to knight c7, this king cannot go to a6 or a8 anymore. Now we're going to king b8 with that king. The next step to do is to force this king away from this corner. So the next move, we're going to take away that square king a7 by going to king b6, which the only move that black can do is king c8. After the king goes to c8, then we're going to do this nifty little trap to keep this king in this triangle. Now, what do I mean by that triangle? Well, the triangle that I'm talking about is to h2, to b8, to h8, back to h2. That's the triangle that we need to keep the black king in. But how? How can we do that? Well, the next moves that I'm going to show you are very crucial to keep the black king in the triangle. For example, we need to do knight d5 so that the king won't go back to b8. After they go to king d7, we're going to move this bishop to g3. And they go to king e6, we're going to move this knight to e3. After this knight goes to e3, you'll probably see the picture of how this king is going to stay in this triangle. For example, we got this bishop taking control of this diagonal, the h2 to b8 diagonal. And now, since our knight is on the same color as his bishop, the knight is taking control of the light squares that are crucial for the king escaping, which is the d5 and the f5 square. Even if this king walks all the way to h5, this bishop is guarding the h4 square and this knight is guarding the g4 square. So the next best thing for the black king to do is go back the other way, which we can go back to knight, not knight, but king d7. After king d7, we can go to king b7. King d8. After king d8, we're going to do a waiting move by doing bishop f4. King d7, bishop c7 to get in this position to force this king to the king side of the board. Now they can go to king e7. We're going to do king c8, king e6, king d8, forcing the king to the king side of the board, forcing the black king to the king side of the board. After that, we can do king d7. If they do king f6, we can do bishop d8, and we'll be putting the king to a smaller diagonal. So the best defense for black is actually to go to king g5. We need to prevent the king from going to h4 by doing bishop g3. After bishop g3, they can do king f6, king d6, and after king d6, they can go back to g5, king e6. They can even go to h5. We will go to king f5. And after king h6, we'll finally get them in a smaller triangle by doing bishop h4, which is on the triangle h4, d8 to h8 to h4. Even if they go back to h5, we can go to bishop e7 to prepare to put them in a smaller triangle by going to f8 in the future. If they move back to h6, this is the time to get our knight closer to the black king. So the last few moves that this knight on e3 is going to do is go to c4, to e5, to c6, to e7. Let me explain by just showing you. Knight c4, h5, knight e5, king h6, and now we're going to push this king further up into the corner by going king g4. Now after king g7, king g5, king g8, king g6, king h8, then now we can move our bishop on the last triangle of the position, which is bishop f8. After bishop f8, if they do king g8, we can go to bishop h6. If they do king h8, we're going to go on the last two squares of the knight's journey by doing knight c6, king g8, knight e7, check. The king cannot go to f8 because of the bishop, king h8, and bishop g7, checkmate. And that's pretty much all she wrote. Those are all the steps that you need to perform to do the bishop knight checkmate in the future.